Namaste, and surprise, surprise, we are doing our first midnight live stream with M. Shastri. So, Namaste, welcome.
Namaste.
So, how you are doing, and how do we are doing live stream at midnight in India, and
Uh,
why we are doing this?
I think I'm doing fine. It's a beautiful Sunday here, but I think we were discussing something else, and I think we just came up to the topic of the what does the world of the Hindu diaspora look like, and I think both of us realized just that our perspectives are quite different, right? Like people in India have uh, an idea that of the diaspora that's kind of I'd say the opposite of actually what happens here. So I think it was my suggestion to basically say that I think we are having an important conversation here, and it should be properly discussed in a live stream, or at least it should be recorded for an audience to at least listen in and gain some perspective.
Yes. So we were discussing about diaspora, correct? So now I live in India. So and you are a diaspora person. So you have lived in India, but now you are a diaspora, part of the diaspora, specifically Hindu diaspora from India. And from our perspective, from people who are living here, the diaspora has a different meaning, a different say feeling itself. Correct? So when we see a person like you, when we are interacting, correct, our emotions are a little bit different when we are talking to a person who just lives in India itself. So same way, I want to understand from your perspective the Hindu diaspora, which is spread across the globe, from Fiji to South America to Pacific to America to Canada and wherever in Africa, to be very honest. How does the Hindu diaspora look at India as a state and people like us who live in India? So your perspective is going to be very important here.
Yeah, so I think before we dive into that question, it's important to understand the composition of the Hindu diaspora, right? Now, um, while India contributes about 80% of all the global Hindu population, when it comes to diaspora, Indian Hindus are only 50% of the broader Hindu or Dharmic diaspora, if you might want to put it that way. The other 50% actually comes from countries like the diaspora, at least came from countries like Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, Fiji, Mauritius, South Africa, and Malaysia, right? And they have a completely different perspective of India and India as a state, and they also have a different experience with Indian history, and India as a state. Um, and I think that's the missing picture that we are having, right? So when you look at the diaspora, the broader Hindu diaspora, we only tend to see the Indian half of it, not the other half. um, so if I were to talk about, say, a Malaysian Hindu, I think both me as an Indian Hindu and a Malaysian Hindu, we have a lot of agreements when it comes to things like, okay, how other religious communities, particularly the Islamic community, interacts with us, right? How there's constant pressures from both the broader society and as well as like very motivated evangelist groups, right? So there's a lot of agreement on that. But when it comes to, say, the topic of India, I think that's where it becomes a little bit more interesting, in the sense that I tend to approach it from an Indian view, whereas the Malaysian Hindu looks at it from a perspective of Malaysian, or from perspective of, say, in this case, like this person is currently lives in Canada, so he's looking at it from a Malaysian and Canadian perspective. So that so and most diaspora folks view their relationship with India through that lens. It's more driven by their own personal experiences rather than like actual fact or something that they have experienced being in India.
Absolutely. And I'm going to give you Anand is here. Hi, Anand. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So we had too much coffee. Yeah. Anand can also, you can also join you can join. Let me share the link as well. I think it's going to be an interesting discussion. I'm going to put the link so you can join as well. Okay. So let me give you that context. So when I went to the Jaipur dialogues, okay, and I met a person, a doctor, okay, and they had a team all together. They had an ashram. Okay, no, you have to come up, have a coffee, and come here. So and they were from I think Mauritius, okay, and Mauritius has about 50, I think above 50% Hindu population. So, and they were talking about, correct, the diaspora Hindu identity, specifically the so-called indentured laborers who were transported to various parts in Africa and also in South America. And when I spoke to them, I was surprised that how Hindu they were, how dharmic they were in their personal life, and how they maintained all the traditions which we have forgotten today, from Tilak to celebration of festivals, puja, and everything else. And that a large number of population is invisible to us as Indians, okay, as Indians who are actually living in Bharat. So you are right, actually. You are very right in that way that this this Hindu Indian population, which is are not born in India, okay, they are born in other countries, but inherently they are of Indian heritage. They have Indian genes. They carry forward the Hindu civilization with their lives outside India, living there. So yes, you're absolutely right, and it's high time that government of India and also us as civil society, who we are, needs to talk about them because they are us. There are no support groups for them. Remember the event happened at Fiji when Fiji had a coup, and I think the African natives were there, and there were a lot of things happening. So they were actually rescued. I think Nehru sent some planes to get them out. So remember, that is a very important juncture where we open our eyes to this, our lost brothers, or maybe our brothers who are not living with us, but they are as Hindu, as Indian as we are in India. Yeah, Shastri.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if I would say they're Indian, but they're definitely Hindu. Um, and the other thing is that I think in Mauritius, at least Mauritian Hindus, they have had the ability and space to maintain their traditions. But I don't see that with Caribbean Hindus, right? But what I do see with Caribbean Hindus is more of an evolution of their traditions and practices. So to highlight the difference, I would probably say take Diwali. For an Indian Hindu, the idea of Diwali is sort of like you go home, spend time with your relatives, you get up early in the morning, wear new clothes, get that oil bath, right? And then you go out there and burst firecrackers. Um, Whereas with Caribbean Hindus, they don't burst firecrackers. They do entire like Ramcharitmanas Pad, right? So they read the Ramayana basically. Uh, so you will see what you will notice with the diaspora is that uh, while they might have lost connections with their local uh, it, it, this bhagwans and deities, right? They have consolidated themselves into adopting the broader Hindu ethos and culture. So you'll often find them being more well versed with the Ramayana than, say, an Indian Hindu would, right? But that doesn't to say that Indian Hindus are less versed, I mean, or have a inferior understanding of Hinduism, but it's just that they have a different way of approaching it, right? If I were to talk to, say, a Maharashtrian, their entire perspective of Hinduism is informed through their bhakti for Vittal. Right? That's quite different from a Caribbean Hindu who might not be aware that there is even a deity by the name of Vittal, but they would be way worse in the Ramayana compared to an Indian Hindu would be. You're on mute.
Yeah, and then we were also discussing about the diaspora Hindu population, let's say. And the way we were actually discussing, the way the Jewish diaspora is taken care of, the way the state of Israel, the Jewish state of Israel, does a lot of things which, unfortunately, the Indian state does not do as much as it should do. And there are a lot of reasons for this, but we as people who are living in India, okay, and who are Hindus by nature, okay, what do you think the Jewish state is been able to do, okay, and why Bharat is not able to do as much as it should be doing to actually create a sense of homeland? As we all know, by all definitions, Bharat is the only homeland for Hindus, not for Indians, for Hindus as of now. Or you can say subcontinent Nepal was a Hindu Rashtra. But overall, in general, Bharat is the only homeland as of now left for Hindus to call them home. But Jewish state is able to do that. So any Jewish person who can prove his Jewish ancestry can go to a Jewish embassy and say, I want to go to Israel. And everything is available to them. The Jewish state will take care of that. Now, we may not be able to do that kind of thing because of the population and other things. But why do you think what happened that the Indian state was not able to assert its Hindu identity and take care of the Hindu populations across the globe?
I think it requires a certain amount of study, right? So I don't think we've dedicated any academic research onto this particular question. So I think we can just, at this moment, we could just make a sort of like educated speculation, and you can speculate in in multiple different ways, right? So I think the first thing is, um, India at the onset of its independence was already dealing with a huge refugee crisis. I think people tend to forget that the partition itself was quite a huge refugee crisis. Uh, like, if you look at the numbers, it's kind of insane, right? Like, you had um, about 7 or 8 million refugees coming from Pakistan, both West and East Pakistan. At the same time, a very under discussed event was also, we had Tamil people who were expelled from Burma. They also came from Burma into Tamil Nadu. Um, so the Indian state itself at that point in time was pretty strapped for resources, right? And you had to deal with three different diaspora groups. You had Punjabis on the northwest, you had Sindhis in the west, you had Bengalis in the east, and you had Tamils in the south. And each one of them introduced a specific kind of problem in the region that they were. So, for example, the Bengalis, when they migrated into Tripura, it caused a lot of problems with the tribal communities over there. They still complain about it to some, and there is some legitimacy to their complaints over there, right? The Pratyota Bourbon does go on ANI and say that, hey, this is what happened. We're willing to accept this because there's nothing you could do about it. But we also want our own space and our own ability to also assert our own culture as well, right? So these kinds of tensions did exist initially. So I think the Indian state just simply did not have the capacity to deal with diaspora that, because of the result of colonization, had been spread all over the world. So and you can see sort of evidences of this, like, so when Uganda basically expelled its Indian community, right? A significant portion of them were Hindus.
Hmm.
The government of India actually um, uh, pushed for their resettlement in the UK. Right? It wasn't the UK government's own, like, benevolence. It wasn't because of the UK government's own benevolence that they took him in. There was some coercion from the government of India's side. So I think we could just simply say that it would not be incorrect to basically say that the government of India just simply did not have that resources. But that's not true in 2025, right? Many of our state governments and also the central government, like, it does run good, healthy amount of surpluses. There's a lot more resources available. So I think that old notion that, oh, we can't take these people in, we should definitely take a serious look at it.
Yes, Anand, are you ready? You had your tea?
Yes, sir. Got my
Okay, very good. Yeah, so I think you are a perfect person to talk about this, as well as Munshi here. So what do you think? What is the perspective of Hindu diaspora? Okay,
So,
from diaspora perspective about us who are living here and the Indian state itself.
so I can give you my experience based on my time in Singapore and a little bit in Malaysia. So I lived in Singapore for like I think 17 odd years, a little more than 17 years, and Malaysia like 2 years. So I've interacted with a lot of Tamil Hindus even some Sikh Hindus in Malaysia, and in Singapore, like, you get Hindus from all communities, right? Not just Tamil, but the majority are Tamil Hindus. So what I have found in Southeast Asia is the Hindus that live there, they don't identify they do identify as Indian. Like, you will see them being called Indian, right? They will not be called Tamil Singaporeans. They'll be called Indian Singaporeans. Like, even the Tamil people will be called Indian Singaporeans. Like the Chinese people will call them Indians, right? So they're always the identity that you're an Indian is ever present. Like, they don't like this language politics is not there at all. Like, you will never find a North Indian in Singapore fighting with a South Indian about language ever.
Okay,
Like, you'll never
just hold on. Okay, just hold on. Is it about the communities tiny? Because when you have a significant amount of people, then only you will have that problem. If the
because
critical mass.
Let me just interject a little bit, right?
Yeah,
so,
go ahead.
So the language issue in Southeast Asia is actually a settled issue, pretty much, right? In Singapore and in Malaysia, the only Indian language you learn is Tamil. You
no,
don't have
that's
Hindi.
not
I mean, in Singapore there might be an option for Hindi though, but
there's a lot of options. No, that's what I'm saying. So we have this not complete cleared up because I studied there, right?
Yeah.
So I went to Hindi school, but I know lots of people who went to Telugu school, who went to who learned Malayalam, who learned Tamil. Like, you can learn almost any language you want. The only thing is that if your numbers are small, then you have to fund basically your own school. Like, the government will not be able to help you.
Right. But government education is still like set in Tamil. That's the point.
Yes.
Yeah. So
the government will only provide you with Tamil education.
Yeah, and political representation is also defined in terms of being Tamil. Like, there's no space for.
No, that's incorrect.
That's incorrect. Okay.
That's incorrect. You can there are a lot of Sikhs who have gone up in Singapore, for example. There are quite a few gurudwaras. Like, I think 2 or 3 gurudwaras, major gurudwaras. People will go there. So it's actually quite the Sikh population is quite high in Malaysia and Singapore. So it's quite established that you're seen as Indian. You're not seen as Tamil. Tamil is just that you just happen to speak Tamil at home. Like, if you go talk to a Singaporean who's not an Indian and you ask them what are you, they'll say you're an Indian. The only distinction is they will see as you in terms of you're culturally a Singaporean Indian. They will not see you as an Indian. Like, that's the distinction. An Indian and a Singaporean Indian. So a Singaporean Indian is one who's integrated with the local culture. Means, for example, they will not spit, they will not litter, they're very strict about rules, like extremely strict about rules. Like, Singaporean Indians don't like Indians for that main reason. So, for example, you immigrate there, they will create distinction between you and them. Say, we are very rule abiding, you people are lawless. Like, that's the attitude they have towards any Indian who comes over, right? So culturally they're assimilated with the local communities, like the three other local communities, just the Singapore, the Chinese, the Malay, and the Anglo. Because the Anglo means you can be white and Chinese, white and Malay, white and Indian mix. So then that's Anglo. So that's three groups. And interestingly, one very interesting thing about South Asia, specifically in Singapore and Malaysia specifically, is Indians have married into Malay communities and Chinese communities, and Chinese are married into Malay communities. So there are specific culture groups there called Nyonya and Peranakan. Like these are specific cultural groups, right? When you have these two cultures mixed, then you have a specific culture you create, subculture, and those are very well known in those two regions. So that's another unique. So if you're an Indian who's born to Chinese parents, not Chinese Indian parents, you'll be called Peranakan, you'll be called a Nyonya. So yeah, I don't know the exact definition, but they call that. The another interesting thing is, so because there's a large Chinese population and a lot of Chinese kids, like sometimes some of them will be abandoned, right? What happens is a lot of Indian families will take Chinese kids in the past, like quite but back they basically took a lot of Chinese kids as they adopted them and raised them as Indian, like literally. You see Chinese kids speaking Tamil randomly. It's a very common thing in Southeast Asia. Like that's. And the majority it happened that direction. So Chinese kid was adopted by the Indian. Very often, that's the more frequent. It's very rare for an Indian kid to be adopted by a Chinese person. Like,
Okay, I'm going to ask you one more question, which I asked to Munshi as well. See, let's take an example or case study of Jewish diaspora. Right? So Israel is a Jewish state. Right? The state character is Jewish. Okay, and the laws are based on Torah itself. Okay, so it's like we can say a Jewish dharmic state in our context.
I don't think so. Israel is based on Torah. I think it's based on secular law. It's an ethnic Jewish state. It's not a religious Jewish state.
So, let's see. I may be wrong, but let's see. I need to check that part. But I think that like they put Torah as like a lot of reverence. So maybe Munshi is going to give some better info on this.
I think that distinction is sort of facetious, given that most secular law actually did come from Judeo-Christian thought, right? And especially in the West, they like to pride themselves in saying that secular thought is a product of enlightenment. So to make that distinction, saying that it's, I'll put it this way: laws in Israel does not see a distinction between various religious groups, right? I think in that sense you could definitely say it's civil and it's secular, but the influence of the laws in Israel is definitely derived from Jewish culture. So
no, but you take for example, they allow atheism, they allow homosexuality.
But at the same time, their building code is dictated by their own Jewish practices. So elevators don't operate. I mean, they have a Sabbat mode, right? So, that's what I'm trying to say. It's like while Israel's law does not see any distinction between, say, Arab Muslim Israeli and a Jewish Muslim Israeli. Jewish law does derive its inspiration from Jewish culture. Sorry, Israeli law. Sorry,
I don't agree.
I mean, the entire programs are structured in that manner.
I don't disagree. I'm saying there will be some cultural markers influence on the society. I'm saying in terms of the way at least I have a friend of mine who's Fionn. He's also a Jewish guy, and I used to ask him questions and stuff. So he told me it is basically Israel is an ethnically Jewish state. The religious people are like they provide cultural feedback and you're right. Basically, the culture influences a lot of their practices. Similar to what, for example, take England, right? England is basically an Anglican Christian state because the fact that all their laws, the pomp and show, all is based on the Anglican Church. Even the Queen is a head of the church and she's the head of the government, but technically the government doesn't listen to anything the Queen wants. The Queen just does what she is, which is basically for ceremonial purposes.
Right.
for the idea.
And Jewish naturalized, sorry, not Jewish. It's mixing the two things up. Israeli naturalization laws does maintain that level of primacy for maintaining the Jewish character of the state, right? So
Hmm.
to some extent, that influence of Jewish culture is baked into their constitution. It's baked into their basic law.
That's
Um,
possible.
so I think that from my perspective, I don't see any distinction. It's more like degrees of separation.
Hmm.
Yeah, so the secular code and the Jewish code coexist within with the state of Israel. Right?
To some extent, they do, right?
No, because it is because correct. Any person who can prove his Jewish identity, okay, like that his mother was a Jewish, he can come and say, okay, and he will be given a Jewish citizenship right away. Correct. That is the law is.
Simplistically put, yes, that's true.
Correct. And even within the Jewish state, you have groups who don't have to do the normal military service and other things just because they are Jewish, and that
Mm,
exception is only given to Jewish exception. Correct.
no, it's not because they're Jewish. It's because they are a specific kind
Arab.
of Jew. Yeah, Haredim. So they're ultra Orthodox Jews, right? So the Indian equivalent would be like giving an exceptions to our archakas and acharyas from being conscripted into the Indian army. That doesn't mean that Hindus are excluded. It just means that particular group is excluded.
I think
In
Arabs
this,
also can avoid military service. If I'm
no,
not wrong.
I'm not sure. I don't think that's true.
I think Arabs can't can basically say I don't want to be part of the army. They're allowed.
Okay, so now we are understanding the contours.
But
Now let's
but
get
you
to
had a
the point.
question. You had a question right now. Umar.
Yeah. The question was that Jews for Jews there is a homeland called Israel. They can
Hmm.
they can call back home. Okay, Slavin, I'll add you in about 2 minutes. Just hold on. Okay. So let your camera getting fixed. So now what I'm asking is that Jews have a homeland called Israel. They can call home whenever they want, and the
Yeah.
state will take care of them. Okay. We know in all practical purpose, Bharat is the only Hindu homeland for Hindus,
Hmm.
but but we do not have the mechanisms, the systems, or any kind of community support group from state at the state level as state of India. Okay, not the state of Gujarat or somebody else. They might have some other programs or community things that is going on. But so, do Hindus who are living outside of Bharat consider Bharat as their homeland, as
In
their
Southeast Asia, no.
natural home?
In Southeast Asia, no.
Okay. Munshi, in North America.
I think there is that notion that India is a Hindu homeland, uh, but I don't think they have thought of India in terms of how Jews view Israel. Um, and and I think we can speculate a little bit because again, there is very little academic study of these issues, right? Nobody wants to actually go and ask Hindus like, "Hey, what do you feel like?" But there are plenty of Hindus who would love to express themselves, and they do, and it sort of goes into the void. Um, but to put it coming back to this question, right? So I think there's a notion that India is a Hindu homeland, but it hasn't metastasized into a concept of making that into a legislative or a policy that the Indian state should basically um, adopt. So there's talks of it, but I don't think there's pressure to make that a reality with the Indian state.
Okay, now Slavin.
Hey, yeah, just taking on your question about how people outside feel. I think from what people I've met over here in Europe, they surely do seem to think of India as sort of a home for themselves. But a vast majority of them don't think they would, move back or like don't have plans to, go settle in India permanently or anything. But I guess they do have it in the back of their heads that, okay, if everything else fails or something, at least we have a place to go back to, something of that sort, is I would say.
Yeah, that's very interesting that you're talking about. So, Munshi, to you, because I think you can give a better answer. So, over a 1,000 year period, correct, the Hindu identity has been put to sword by lot of invaders, Muslim invaders, Christian people, and others come. So do you think for last 1,000 years the assault on Hindu identity, and the state being anti-Hindu in nature, okay, from the Islamic invasions onwards, has that created a kind of a de-Hinduize mindset to people who are living in subcontinent? Because end of the day these people actually went from here to the other places, from British times onwards. So are Hindus now that de-Hinduize enough that they see Bharat as a homeland but not as a Hindu homeland?
I think you can look at this from multiple different perspectives, right? So, one thing I would definitely say is that history does play a huge role in this, and you don't need to. And it's not 1,000 year history; it's more like 200 years. Right? Most of the diaspora that we see today in the world, um, they are a result of British colonial policy. Right? When a lot of Hindus were basically uh, contracted as indentured laborers, and they were sent to Malaysia, Singapore, Mauritius, Uganda, Kenya, Uganda, Guyana, and the Caribbean. So, when you're that disconnected from your homeland for such a long time, with no ability to basically contact them or reach back, I think you tend to form your own sense of place in the world, and you essentially become what, I hate this term, but what JNU folks call the subaltern, right? So they are the minority within the minority, right? Their voices have not have consistently been suppressed, right? And I want to give you the example of Caribbean Hindus, right? Because um, the Western world is very familiar with slavery, right? So, but they refuse to see uh, what they replaced it with: indentured servitude. So you will see some this weird tacit support for African movements or black movements in the Caribbean, but you'd see this like stoic silence when those same movements basically engage in form of ethnic cleansing against the Hindu communities over there. So, um, if you go back to say the 1960s, 1970s, right, you would not find any reporting on an ethnic cleansing campaign called the Wismar ethnic cleansing that happened in Guyana. Um, Overnight, and if you read any descriptions of it or you talk to the community about that particular ethnic cleansing, you'd find um, extreme parallels to what happened in the partition, right? They were told to evict overnight. If they didn't do that, their homes were burned, their businesses were looted, women were raped, etc., etc. The whole gambit. So, and the Indian state was not there to help them, right? They were not there to put diplomatic pressure. They, unlike today, they did not send ships or aircraft to evacuate them or resettle them. So I think there's the
Munshi, I'm just going to interject for 30 seconds. uh, there did not I'm just, maybe I'm comparing apples to oranges, but just for argument's sake, correct, there was no Jewish state for 3,000 years, but still they had a spiritual connect with the Jerusalem for Jews.
I mean, they still do have that spiritual connection with India, right? What they don't have is this political connection, right? They can't rely upon the Indian state to save them at the end of the day. And that aspect needs to be built in. Like, if you talk to any Caribbean Hindu, um, they'll tell you all about Ramayana. They'll tell you all about the places that they'll point to the places in India, right? Even more recently, they're actually way more excited to go see the Ram temple in Ayodhya. But when it comes to aspects about, oh, will India have our back when things go south? I think there's a little bit of um, uh, doubt over there that, oh, if that will even manifest, right? And they see this sort of distinction between an Indian Hindu like myself, because we have the ability of sort of like a law of return, right? So because we are born in India, or we are within the 2 or 3 generations that Indian citizenship um, allows for as a recognition as an Indian person of Indian origin. Like, they see that distinction, they recognize that distinction, and they understand that it doesn't apply to them.
And why it doesn't apply to them? Is there any, like, do you find any logic behind why it is not applied to them? Because end of the day, in the British colonial period, they went there. It was not like something that they were not born. Probably their ancestors were born in the subcontinent.
Yeah, I mean, they recognize that, right? Like, I think, as Naipaul put it, I think India is a place of Anand might remember this. Like, he said something in the lines of, it's a place of my dreams and my nightmares, or something like that.
I'm not sure.
He had a very distinct phrase for it. Like, um, it brings them both joy and sorrow, right? In that way, the joy comes from seeing India rise, but the sorrow comes from not being recognized as one among that community, and that requires a lot of repair. And some of it can come from the Indian state. Like, I think the Modi government recently, I think, extended that or amended citizenship laws to recognize, I think, up to 7 or 8 generations, I believe, which would cover Caribbean Hindus.
Is that something which is not there, correct, in the media? Because I've not heard it in the general media.
I heard it in diaspora media. So I don't think they have widely advertised that in India, at least. I don't know. There could be several reasons why they didn't do that. But there's been some indications from the Indian state. But largely, I think it should also come from Indian society, right? The broader Hindu society. Like, every time, so every time there's an attack on a temple, it shouldn't just be like Indian Hindus talking about it, but also British Hindus also raising this issue. Also Singaporean Hindus, right? I mean, in the sense, like, they want the broader Hindu community to make noise.
No, but they are right now. I think the interesting things happening right now. In the past, when the Bangladesh riots, the Bangladesh attack on Hindus started, right? I'm telling you, at least in my feeds, the number of Malaysian Tamils, the Tamil Hindus, and the Malaysian, like Singaporean Hindus, again Tamil people, literally saying our Hindu brethren are being attacked by the Islamists. They attack us similarly in Malaysia as well. Right? Like, literally, that was coming in my feed so frequently. So there is definitely that Hindu connection. But I want to answer the question that Nava asked earlier. It's because of the framing with which Indians are defined. We're defined as people within this nation, this region. And that's where I see even the Savarkar definition of Hindu fails. Because when he says the people within this land, this is the Karma Bhumi, they are the Hindu, then people who live abroad cannot be Hindu. Even if you're a Hindu, even if you pray to the same gods. Because you're not within that land. Right? You've already gone. You've gone abroad.
Sacred geography. Correct.
Correct. Secondly, some of our laws are also very bad. Like, I'll give you an example. The Hindu joint family. How is a Hindu defined there? Hindu plus also a Hindu Marriage Act. How is a Hindu defined there? Hindu is defined there as one who gets married within the geography. Do you know, like tomorrow, if imagine I grow abroad, okay, or Nava, you go abroad, and you marry a Hindu girl in the US, and you come back here, they will not recognize you under Hindu Marriage Act. They will recognize you under the Special Marriage Act because you're not seen as a Hindu anymore because you didn't get married within India. It's ridiculous. They don't define you as a Hindu because you did Hindu rituals and got married. They define you as Hindu because you did Hindu rituals in India. Then only you're defined as Hindu. So, for example, when my sister got married abroad, she's not a Hindu. She can't be under the Hindu Marriage Act. She cannot come. She has to go under the Special Marriage Act, even though she's married to another Hindu. So that's my point. So the reason our laws are so badly written, they have no understanding of Hindus outside of India. They don't even acknowledge them. That's the saddest part. You don't acknowledge them.
Understand. So, Slevin, you have something to say.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a quick sort of counter to what Anand is saying. So I think
Can you speak little bit louder or come to the mic little bit more? I think, or just bit closer.
Sorry. So I think what you're referring to is a law. So like Hindu Marriage Act that would always be confined to the Indian geography. As you remember, all sort of our laws start with earlier. They also used to famously have that phrase. This applies to all of India except J&K, Jammu and Kashmir. So I think it's a function of that more than trying to exclude your sister or whoever it is who had a marriage outside. So
no, I'm not saying that purpose. I'm saying they didn't acknowledge the fact that Hindus exist outside of the country. I'm not saying they purposely did it to be mean. I'm saying when they wrote the law, they didn't even think that Hindus outside the country would want to come back and be part of the community. They didn't think that far ahead. It's like, oh, well, I only care about people in this land. And that also clearly what M. Shastri said earlier about the fact that they had so many people coming and they had to deal with a lot of people just after partition. So they didn't think that far ahead that, oh, there may be people from Guyana and Fiji and people from Singapore and Malaysia who might want to be associated with our country. They're like, oh, those people are already gone abroad and they've settled down. They're not our problem anymore. I think that definitely would have happened.
Okay, M. Shastri, I'm going to come back to you and we're going to hit the crux of our argument that we were actually discussing privately regarding, as mentioned by Anand, correct? The laws are very weird in a way, correct? Maybe reason may be different, but Hindus not being in power, like in central power, okay, is the Indian state in general is more conductive or much more suitable for people who are not Hindu, because the laws are made in such a way that being Hindu is incentivized in so many ways and being non-Hindu is incentivized. Is it part of the colonial structure or before even colonial structure when we had the Islamic invasions, and has that played an important role to de-incentivize and to de-link the people of Hindu origin living outside Bharat's boundaries?
I mean, so government of India as an entity is a weird entity, right? Like, just to put it simply, so because it's not like they don't care. It's an aspect of just pushing the problem away, and this is how the Indian state has actually functioned for quite a long time. Take the 1972 expulsion of Indians from Uganda as an example, right? Like, I think there were just about 200,000 to 300,000 people. That's not a lot in the when it comes to India, right? We've dealt with larger numbers. Yet the government of India did not take them in and push them to the UK.
There is an alternate narrative as well, where actually they did not want to come to India because India was a third world country and because they were actually like a lot of things were there with British and they took it over. So I think there is a bit of a
No, I mean that's a coping statement. That's not true necessarily. Like because there was a lot of um uh diplomatic back and forth going on between New Delhi and London,
hmm,
right? So um I think the government of India framed the British accepting Ugandans as a form of reparations, right? Like, see, you created this problem. You brought these people from our homeland. Now you're telling us that we need to take them back, and you're not even that's how they sort of framed it, right? Like, you were the rulers, you sent them there. It is your responsibility to take to deal with it, and we're not taking them in because we don't have the ability to do so. Right? There's some of that kind of like thinking, and there's also the other kind of thinking that actually it did not come from colonial history, but rather more recent history, like especially post 80s, where the Indian state sort of developed this sort of thinking that um, they should not come in assistance of Hindus, because then Hindus would be perceived as Indian rather than belonging to that said country. That kind of thinking came out of the Sri Lankan Civil War, and that thinking still prevails today. And I believe that inhibits government of India from being more proactive and reaching out to the diaspora. I mean, which is why, despite having um, quite a large and influential diaspora, it took until 2003 for us to even start a Pravasi Divas, right? So where we basically reach out to diaspora, talk to them, do these people to people exchanges, cultural exchanges, check in on them, and etc. etc.
okay. I
So
am going to do a reality check. Just to hold on. So from my weird perspective, correct? Do the diaspora people think that the Indian government just wants their money to be in the bank because they are always dearth of foreign reserves?
no, I don't think that's true anymore. I
It was there previously
I think
that they
that
want our money.
that probably died in the mid 2000s already.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like these days, people want to invest in India, and they also want the 6-7% returns that the institutional investors get. Right? So we want a piece of that pie. So I mean, if I ask Anand, and if I ask like what Singaporean Hindus or Singaporean Indians are thinking, they're probably thinking in terms of investments.
Okay.
Um,
Okay, I'm going to ask one more question because sorry, because this is an important question because from our perspective, okay, uh, do the diaspora people, correct? They are highly educated, everything is fine, okay. But do they have a kind of a high nose when because okay, you are living in India, so we are at the higher pedestal because we have left India and we are now on the higher stage. Is that a kind of thing is there exists?
That is changing. So there was definitely a sense that okay, we are living in a better society than you are.
Hmm, hmm.
But as India solves its issues, becomes much more less Matsya Nyaya and more like there's actual rule of law. As it becomes much more cleaner, as uh, society as a whole takes more ownership of uh, the temples and everything, right? The their perspective of India is also changing. Now, again, I want to go back to Naipaul, because one of the things when you read Naipaul, you actually sort of get a insight into how the diaspora thinks, right? He visits a temple in India, and you're talking about the 70s, and India was quite a hellhole in the 70s. Like, you could actually see the fragments of the 70s in India all the way up to early 2000s. It was pretty bad. So if you went to a temple, you had to go through this narrow alleyway with a very stinky gutter on the side. You never know if someone would spill like a really bad water on you. And this was the experience that any diaspora who with any sense of like bhakti would come in and would experience, right? And you compare that to how pristine the experience would be going to a church in the West would look like. So there was always a sense of resentment in those perspectives, that the Indian state never took good care of anything that was under it, right? And there was a sense of like, if the Indian state is this bad, uh, then I might as well disconnect from it and maintain my own little space where I can just live the life that my ancestors taught me. So um, that's why you never had these pilgrimages coming from any diaspora communities, but they are doing those so right now. Right? You're muted.
Levin, yes, Levin, you go ahead. Share your perspective. I will be back in 2 minutes. I need to get water.
Yeah, sure. So, around the law thing, I just wanted to make a quick sort of point. I recently saw a video of there were some people in an ashram who are ethnically white people, okay, but they are Hindu by.
Little louder, Slevin. Your voice not very clear. Little louder.
Oh, sorry. So I recently saw a video where there were like white people, basically ethnically white people, but they have converted to Hinduism. Now, like we were arguing in Indian law, people are being excluded from being Hindu. And this is not a law, but matter of, I think it was Jagannath Puri temple. It specifically excludes them from entering because they are not Hindu or
Indeed.
Indian, which I think is discriminatory because, like, in practice, in they are more Hindu than I am. Like I don't do all the whatever religious things on a regular basis. They are 10 times, 100 times more Hindu than, but I am allowed to go just because I'm born over here. So that, I think that sort of, even at a religious level, we need to think of people who might not be from India and how to include them if they are willingly coming, because we are not a sort of missionary religion. So it's much like Jewish people who sort of don't try to uh, grab people into our sort of cult or whatever it is. But at least if people are willingly coming in, we can't be discriminated, because it was like really sad to see that. Now, second thing I wanted to tell was like you were asking about just the perception of like non-residential or like diaspora community being a money bag for the government. I think there is a little bit of that, because I'll tell you sort of my family sort of, I have a sort of a relative, okay? Now his daughter was born in the US. He came back to India after like 5-10 years, and they are all Indian citizens, except the daughter who was born over there and hence had the US passport. Now over here, the schools charge her like 5x or 10x because she is, like not. So I think there may not be that much discrimination in sort of the government sense, although the rates sort of do tend to go up when you are an NRI for taxation and many other things. But there is also a sort of implicit discrimination we have in other parts that are like sort of more private institutions as well. So I think we need to address that as well. Like if we want to be a sort of treat everyone with an even hand. So I think that is what I wanted to say. If you guys have any other points or anything.
Yeah, I wanted to respond to the question Nava asked again earlier. See, I think it's we use it we broad brush in terms of like foreign immigrants, like foreign Hindus, right? Diaspora Hindus. See, I'll give you an example, very interesting example. So, among Hindus in Singapore, there's no aspiration to go and live in India. However, for decades, since the time when they all had migrated to Singapore, they've had constant contact with their communities back home. So the Punjabis in Singapore have contact with Punjabis in Punjab. The Tamils in Singapore have contact with Tamilians in Tamil Nadu. They've got long-term contacts in Singapore, especially. I'm not talking about Malaysia. So Singapore, that's the situation, because I think because of the prosperity and the easy travel, because it's a port city, like the port access is very good. So if you literally in Tamil Nadu, there is the concept of going to Singapore. The idea of going to Singapore, it's like a temporary graduation. Like you go to Singapore to see the beautiful city, and there are even Tamil songs. Going to Singapore, like they'll put the Singapore going experience. Then the Tamil song will be there. To go to Singapore and see the place and see and enjoy the temples there and come back. It's a reverse, but in Malaysia it's the opposite. In Malaysia, the Indian is not treated very well. So they do have aspiration to come back to India at some point. Like especially recently, the amount of discrimination they're facing, a lot of them want to come. Like they want the ability to come back to India, because it's getting harder and harder for them day by day, right? So I think that is where the power dynamic, where whether the community is successful enough, then they don't mind staying where they are, right? They don't see any need to come back. But if they're going through difficulty, then they want to come back. I think that's one thing. Second thing is, I don't think in Singapore, Malaysia, both of them don't think that the government is interested in them. Like they perceive the Indian government is not even caring about their existence, because historically we have done nothing with the Indian community in the East. They've not even bothered even acknowledging them. Like most people, I guarantee you, young, even like a little older than me, would not even known there were Indians in places like Thailand or in places like Indonesia, or in places like there are Indian communities even there also, but no one knows that they exist because they don't care. They're like, state doesn't care, people don't care. Like, oh, that's the problem. So if the people don't care, then the state doesn't care. Then obviously that those communities are detached. That's my perspective. Everyone cares about two places: US, maybe a little bit UK, and Singapore. Nowhere else. No one cares about any other place.
Yeah, with respect to Malaysia, I think that feeling is much more recent. Because I think in the mid to late 2000s, there was a whole series of protests that was happening in Malaysia by this organization called Hindraft, HINDRAF, I believe, right? Do you remember that, Anand?
No, I don't. I know, but I will tell you one thing. While they may have, it may be recent, the thing I'm talking about right now, but historically, Hindus in Malaysia have not had a good time of it. They don't find themselves integrated. Well, another interesting thing you'll realize. So in Singapore, an Indian is allowed to speak his language. Okay, so allowed to learn his language. In Malaysia, an Indian has to learn Malay. So in school, in start, you have to learn Malay. So Malaysia is an example of how not to do language politics, because Malay has literally detached many of the Indians from their own identity, because they just speak Malay. They think they're Malaysian. They're Malay like everyone else.
Yeah. I'm talking about India and the Malaysian diaspora, not Malaysia and the Indian diaspora. But I think like at that point in time, the UPA government was in power, so they just like ignored the entire problem there. Huh?
They don't care. Yeah, they
don't care. But
not UPA. Everyone. I'm sure Atal Bihari Vajpayee also didn't care. My point is that it is a very recent phenomenon.
No. ABP did. Previous governments did. Like
never heard of him talking about Southeast Asian Hindus ever.
That's the problem with Indian diplomacy. We don't make public statements at all. Sub piche.
No, I'm saying, like when I lived there, I never even heard of the Indian, like any outreach from them, contacting the locals and saying, "Okay, do you want to have a relationship?" If they had done outreach, we would have heard it, because the community, the Hindu community in Singapore, for example, is very small. Like you hear everything coming from India, like almost anything.
Yeah. No, but again, it's like I'm bringing you back to the 72 example, right? Like there was no public outreach by government of India. But if you read the diplomatic notes, any kind of archives that the British government releases, right? You realize that they put in a immense amount of pressure on the British government to basically take them in. I suspect that is what has been happening with other countries as well. Especially, I know it's happening with Malaysia, because they they do quiet down if New Delhi raises quite a lot of noise in their capitals.
But
They do
do you
quiet
think
down quite a bit. So I suspect that's what's happening in the background.
Mm.
So, but I think like what the diaspora, like Anand might have hinted at, is more public statements, right? Not just from the state, but also from society. So recently, I think there was a Tamil boy who was, and the Malaysian PM basically in public, live, made him read the Kalma. It created quite a bit of
Are
outrage
you
in,
sure?
yeah,
Anwar Ibrahim is not that kind of person. Are you sure it's Anwar
uh,
PM?
or his predecessor, I believe.
Mahathir also wouldn't do that. Mahathir is half Indian.
Not Mahathir, someone else, but it became quite a big issue, right? Like in Southeast Asia, and it all I could see some of the diaspora papers here talk about it. But in India, there was very little coverage on that subject. Even the government, even the Hindutva government, was very mum about it. But
I don't see anything.
it is there.
I'm not able to find. I'm saying the same. I'm not able to find. I searched the keywords Indian boy, Kalma, Malaysia. Didn't find anything. But okay, it's okay. Let's just go on.
Just to Tamil Malaysian version. I think that's the keyword
Okay.
you're looking for.
Okay.
It did happen because I definitely did read it in some diaspora papers. I don't forget these things.
So sometimes people make stuff also. Unfortunately, that's the sad part.
Yeah, and this was brought up to me again by a Malaysian Hindu, so it's not something.
Oh, okay.
It's not easy to forget. So, but I suspect like
But it's possible. It's possible. So there's a state called Terengganu in Malaysia, which is extremely like Islamist filled, right? They have significant problems with Islamists there. But if it is a place like KL or Johor Bahru, the southern state, right? Certain states, Kelantan and all, it should be fine. If it's Terengganu, it's possible. It can happen. It's very possible.
okay.
And interestingly, the Chinese diaspora was raising this. Malaysian Chinese were raising this issue.
Malaysian Chinese are very, very anti-Malaysian state. They don't
They're
like it.
very vocal. But broader Indian society was missing. The broader Indian state was also missing. So
No, but that is because again, no one cares about Malaysia. Like no one even acknowledges the Hindu community in Malaysia. People don't acknowledge that's the whole point.
yeah, that brings me
Do
to
you
my
think
point.
is so you're
That's
saying
Levin. Go ahead.
yeah, so you guys were saying that the Hindu community doesn't really get the much attention from the government. Now let's contrast this with the community Indians we have in Middle East and Dubai. They always seem to have the attention, and most of them do not seem to be from our religion. They are from some other religion, but Indians who are in Middle East remember there was, I think, invasion of Iraq or like even I think Kuwait, and then Indian government did do efforts to bring all the people back home, and this was in the 1990s. So government of India did care about Indians in the Middle East, and most of them do tend to be non-Hindu. So do you think there is something over there?
I think there is. The Islamic community is Islamic and Christian community both are very good at lobbying. Hindus are horrible at lobbying. So I mean that makes a lot of sense. Like literally they'll use their religion they will use their religious leaders. And one significant problem is our religious leaders are focused on ritual. They could not care about politics. While both the religions that we refer to just now, their religious leaders care about politics primarily. The primary the discussion for them is politics. Even during their religious ceremonies and sermons, there is politics in it. Like literally, every speech, so we'll talk about Jesus, they will talk about politics. If they talk about daily kalma reading, whatever, and what they do in the mosque, there's 100% sure there's talk about politics. What do we do in our temples? We pray to the God. If you go to a temple and the person you say you do archana, you do your prayer and you leave. You don't even spend time like talking about the situation of Hindus, finding out the fellow Hindu who comes to temple, what is the situation, where are they from, like what is the situation in their locality, Hindu localities. Imagine you come to you don't take time to talk about it, right? But they will sit and talk about it. They will sit and talk about their religion, right? Which we don't. So that is what has happened. So if you look at the olden time, so I had a very interesting experience I had when I was in this. Ironically, was when I was in the US. Okay, so I was in the US and I went to a temple with all my dad's friends, and I was getting ready to leave, and he went and sat down in one corner. I'm like, sir, why are we not leaving? He's like, no, every time you go to temple, you got to sit and you got to do dhyana in the temple. So was a new concept to me. I never knew this, right? So our like the way we are raised in terms of Hindu consciousness is very different from what some people are raised, like other communities are raised, and that is significantly the reason why this happens. And
Okay.
where does government respond to when religious leaders are political, and our religious leaders are the only one time they're political is when it's to do with caste. Oh, this caste cannot come here, that caste can come there. Then they get involved in politics. Like that's all you care about, like literally. It's changing now,
Okay.
so I'm really happy.
Yeah, Munshi.
Yeah, so I think that's there is a sense of abandonment, right? I think that needs to be fixed. How you go about it, I think it should be a wider conversation, right? We don't need everybody to pay attention to everything, but we need people to pay attention to specific things and raise it to everybody. And I think that aspect is missing. And the other thing is, I think we also need to look at the different experiences each of our diaspora community has experienced, right? So Singapore Tamils, they've always had a connection with India. To some extent, you can also say that's true for Malaysians. But for Caribbeans, that has never been the case, right? They've been disconnected from India for about 200 years, like 6 or 7 generations, if you think about it.
Yeah.
So while they have a concept of India, like I said, they are spiritually connected, but they're not politically connected, and or even socially connected. So I think that needs to be rebuilt. And as the Indian state gets more and more powerful, I think it should take up the responsibility of raising noise, and this quiet diplomacy that it does in the background is no longer sufficient.
Yeah. No, but I think for Hindu community, the religious leaders need to speak up, and they can't only be focusing on like controversial stuff, right? Like some the Tirupati Laddu. That can't be the only thing you talk about all the time. Like you can't just be focused on that. What about
No,
the positive stories? They don't do
I,
that.
I think along with you should not exclude the Tirupati Laddu stuff as well, right? Also,
No, I'm not excluding. I'm saying
yeah, I'm saying like also spare a thought for the diaspora broadly as well, right? And I think it's high time we have this concept of attack on one is an attack on all, right? So we often see from religious Hindu religious leaders is that Shankaracharya will never comment on a desecration of a Bap's temple, right? Like, but he'll raise all kinds of noise for his own temple. I think that mentality they need to start being more inclusive, right? Like,
no, but I don't think it's that bad because I'll give you an example. Like recently, if you
no, I definitely don't think so. But I think it's like these are things that they haven't thought about, right? Like a lot of things is not a result of malice. I wouldn't
no,
even
I'm
say
saying
a result
I'll
of
give you an
ignorance.
example.
It's just a result of like they haven't thought about these things before, because a lot of these things are quite new.
No, they have. I'll give you an example. So I want to give you an example. That's what I'm saying. So Tamil Nadu is a state where caste lines are very clear, right? There are caste division and stuff. However, very interesting. Recently, I think it happened 2 years ago. There is this concept where you take the guru and you take them on a palki and you take them around the locality to meet the people, right? So the Shaivite community in the one village wanted to take the guru out to meet the people. It's very rarely that happens. And the DMK government sent police to stop him, or they tried to stop him basically. Do you know the Vaishnavite community in Tamil Nadu, the GR stood up and said, "You cannot do this. You cannot stop a religious event to happen." And that was a very this is happening more and more, and it's actually happening right now. So people are, because of the fact that people are realizing this is happening on a regular basis, people are stepping up and saying this is not acceptable, right? So I think it is changing. And I think social media has changed that quite a bit, because in the past, what happened was the state took advantage of the fact that information took time to travel to do such things in isolation. But I think if people had access to information so fast, I think Hindus would have stepped up. My opinion. Right? Seriously, I feel it. And because what happened in our country was like the social Hindu social fabric was broken, like just torn into sections, right, to manage. So what happened to the state and functions of the state, like the bureaucrats, the politicians, they took on the role of getting information from place to place. So, for example, why did the car sevaks were so successful? It's because the politician and the social groups like VHP and RSS took the responsibility of passing on the data from place to place to place. So imagine if they were not there. Do you think it would have been successful? The Ram Janmi movement would have been so successful? It would not have been so successful because someone needed to pass on the data from place to place to place without social media, right? And that's why the value of the RSS is so great, because they're able to do these things. They're able to pass on the fundamental message, right? But now even the religious leaders, the non-social groups, like this, the religious leaders are taking a step forward. They're like, okay, we have to start talking about it more, which I'm glad about. But my bigger point was, don't just stay to the controversial topics like this politician said this comment. What about, for example, take for example the Ganga, right? Ganga is not very clean. If religious leaders across the country can say, we are going to, from every state, they're going to collect money and Hindus are going to clean the Ganga, not rely on the state. Hindus are going to pool money and clean the Ganga, and we're going to show that our faith is so strong that the state is not even required to clean the Ganga. Or, for example, the Gyanvapi. What if all the Shaivite the temples in the country were like, until the Gyanvapi is liberated, every week, 1 hour, we will sit in silence. The temple sit in silence, and no one will pray until we get our Gyanvapi mosque, the Gyanvapi temple back. Just think the advocacy power that has, right? Or they can fund the lawyers who are fighting the case for Gyanvapi. So many things you could do to be civil, which is what other communities do, which Hindu communities are not doing.
Yeah, I think this is also why the state should invest more in the diaspora as well, right? So they can contextualize these things really well to their local audiences. So, for example, right, if you leave the Ram Mandir movement to just Indian journalists, they would basically say, "Oh, it was a mosque, it was demolished, and we built a Hindu temple on top of that." What they miss out, what the diaspora actually did in that case was basically like, yes, there was a mosque, it was demolished, we built a Hindu temple, but before that, there was a Hindu temple. We've been fighting for it legally, socially, culturally, in a non-violent manner for 400 years. We lost patience, right? And that kind of contextualizing can only come from a diaspora. It can't come from an Indian journalist.
Correct. You're right.
Okay, so now we're going to take the final thing. Let me share my screen because this is important, because it talks about the advocacy that we all are want to see and happen. So here is the organizer article, RSS at 100, Samajik Samartha, bridging divide, strengthening Bharat. The primary focus of Sangha is called social harmony. Okay. So, do you think that in search of social harmony, are we going to lose our hard power that you say is required?
I can say something. No one's going to say
Go
anything.
ahead.
I can say.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
See, I will tell you one thing very honestly. You are in a world, and while Munshi said that Matsya Nyaya is over and law and order is set, in the end, Matsya Nyaya is the only thing that gets you power. I'm sorry that I know the Western concept of liberalism gets like you look at history. The West, in spite of the fact that they have this so-called New World Order, they have used force wherever they need to get what they wanted. They've not bothered. They don't say, okay, we have these principles, we will just follow them. No, they have broken the principles and they have used force wherever they wanted.
I
And
think
they apologize for it. And they've never apologized for it, never faced up to it. And the minute even this recent this oil thing, right, with the oil tariff thing, what is the response when you tell them you are hypocritical? Tough. I've seen journalists, Western journalists say, like there's Richard Quest, this business journalist, he's like literally telling the Indian journalist, tough, deal with it. We are more powerful. Like that's literally the argument they have.
I think you're
It's not the fact that
I think you're mischaracterizing me. When I meant Matsya Nyaya, I meant that in a domestic context, not in a
no, I'm
foreign
not blaming
context.
you. Not
Yeah, like I meant it in a domestic context, but not in a foreign policy context, right? Like in the sense that we need to domestically, we do need to move away from a Matsya Nyaya to a system of really strong rule of law. That's
no, but
non-negotiable. When it comes
no,
to
no,
when it comes to foreign
let me.
policy, hold on.
No, I get that.
When,
I get that. I
when it
understand
comes to
that.
foreign policy, like there's no principles. I think we are in agreement in that.
No, I'm saying even within the state, you'd understand without like, let's think about it. Okay. Now, if I have a house, okay, I have a house, I have walls. So I have house. I don't put up walls. Anyone will walk into my house because they feel they're welcome to come in. That's literally the reality of India, right? Why do people have gated communities? Why do they have gated? Because they don't want anyone to come in. They want to keep the world out. Literally, the way our society is. In Singapore, you don't have gated communities. You have gated communities, but very rich gated communities. The common HDB is open to anyone. Anyone can walk by the apartment complexes. But in India, we have every single place is a gated community. Why? Because fundamentally, we have not. The state doesn't have the power to ensure law and order. It just doesn't. I'm telling you, I love the fact that there should be law and order. The state, like I agree with Abhishek Mitra, that the state should be the primary arbiter of law and order. No one else should have power. But the reality is the state does not and will never have, and at least for the next 20, 30 years, to enforce law and order for every citizen. So the reason I said that, the reason using this, I'm saying, if you want Hindu society to be progressive and be able to like keep its strength, you don't have to have aggressive force, but you have to have defensive strength. You cannot leave your defense and your protection up to the state every time. Which there I agree with Jay Sai Deepak. He's understood the concept absolutely right. Tomorrow, if a mob comes to, like, take my building, right? We have a gated community. If a mob comes, they can swamp this gated community. It's very easy, right? We have no ability. We don't have the ability to defend ourselves. We don't know how to defend ourselves. So that hard power you need that hard power in terms of like you should be able to defend yourself.
Yeah,
that's my point.
Agree. I agree with that, but I think I want to make a slight distinction, right? So what we see domestically and what we want to do for in terms of in the foreign foreign policy realm should be quite distinct. Like you need to have a firewall between them because domestic problems are not the same as foreign problems. The second thing I do want to state is that I think there's an issue of mentality, right? Like the government of India can still chase social harmony and retain its hard power, or can abandon social harmony and still retain its hard power. It's just a fact. Sorry, it's not a fact. It depends on how the MEA links the two issues, right? Now, if if the MEA links social harmony to hard power, then I think we will lose that battle quite quickly, right? We will lose our hard power quite quickly. If they de-link it, right, with by saying that no, this is our domestic problem, it's you're interfering in our domestic affairs, shut up, then I think we retain our hard power. So I think that maintaining that kind of firewall and being very disciplined about what other countries can comment about when it comes to your domestic affairs is very, very important if you want to retain any
The,
hard power.
so
Yeah, Levin.
I wanted to say, so I think what Mohan Bhagwat's approach over here is correct actually, because see, now that we have a right-wing government in power, they can't comment explicitly about, because see, all societies have like loonies and crazy people, and although the percentage of crazy people in our community is quite less, there will still be some crazy people, and if they signal something very strong, then we would have repercussions in for diaspora in other countries as well. And as you know, like all these other countries, they they just need one or two cases to pick up from to blow everything out of proportion. And there are, there are many sort of Christian or missionary groups or something. They just want that one incident or one example to pick out and say, okay, look at these guys. What are they doing over there with their minorities and stuff like that? So it it's actually good that they're trying to keep a lid on things and trying to, because when they are in power, I think this is the correct stance. Were there a left wing government, then it would be right to protest and be a little more hard stance or something. And these statements are just for public consumption. I'm pretty sure the hard power is maintained beneath a layer of bureaucracy, and the people who actually operate on ground know what's going to happen and like operate in the pretty much the same way.
I disagree with it in a minor way. I think I see it as a sign of linking the two issues together. Right now, let's just tabletop this a little bit. Right, somebody makes a very controversial statement. The Middle East blows up, right, and they start threatening the Hindu communities there. Right. Government of India has all the hard power to just roll in with troops and overthrow anybody and everybody in the Middle East. It absolutely does, right? It can do that. All it takes is just one division of the Indian Army and a couple of warships from the Indian Navy, and that's it. The entire Middle Eastern powers are completely screwed. They have no hard power.
I
So
think you're forgetting that many of them are under US sort of umbrella. So
US is not going to come to protect them in these issues. The US Navy is quite weak when it comes to the Indian Ocean region. They rely on Indian Navy logistics just to maintain their operations in the Indian IOR. So
Yeah.
at this point in time, right, like if the government wants, it can exercise hard power. It can tell other powers to say, this is our domestic issue. You have no basis on commenting on it. They will just shut up. They will any power between say Portugal all the way up to Japan, right, with the exception of China, cannot, if the government of India takes a tough stance, they cannot make government of India move at all. Even the US is trying, by the way, right now, right? It's trying with sanctions and everything else. You see how much of a spine government of India has. I mean, it can if it absolutely wants to. So it's
I
a
think you're
choice.
missing. I think you're missing the point that even though we may hypothetically we may have the power to shut them up, but we don't have the power to shut the media or other people. You might be able to shut up a government of the next country, but not the
None of
people,
that
the news channels and everything.
none of
And
that
they're going to
matters.
pressure.
None of that matters. For the past 4 years, right, ever since the Ukraine war began, we've been going through incessant amount of media, extremely negative media coverage, but that did not change government of India's position at all. So the media, these are all excuses, right? Ultimately, it depends on whether MEA Babu decides that we need to show a spine or we don't need to show a spine. It's as simple as that.
So
And I, unfortunately, I see Mohan Bhagwat's statement as linking the two issues, and that's bad. Whereas the two issues should be completely delinked.
So I wanna agree and disagree with both of you all at the same time. It's very complicated. There's too many grays. Unfortunately, there's too many grays in the discussion. See, the first thing is, let me be clear. We have already lost the narrative war about Hinduism. I'm telling you right now, honestly. The world hates Hindus. This is the reality. Much of Africa hates Hinduism. Much of South America hates Hinduism. There are Hindu communities, of course, coming up. There are a lot of the so-called woke, very very hippie people who are attracted towards ISKCON type of Hinduism. Okay, but they're not attracted to Hinduism in general. Now they're getting attracted. That's fine. But most of the Christian Islamic world hates Hinduism. They just do. And some may be nice and polite and like, oh, I don't want to offend you. I don't want to be your enemy. Let's live together, kumbaya. But they don't like you. Okay. So no matter what you do, even one incident is enough to trigger a problem. Even small one. Like literally, there was this one boy went to some church in Nagaland or somewhere in Northeast, and he started singing Jai Shri Ram, some song he sang. And the whole bloody Western ecosystem started tweeting that. They didn't do anything. He just went and said Jai Shri Ram. It's like someone came and said, praise Jesus. And then I'm like, oh my God, I'm so offended. How dare you say praise Jesus in front of me? Oh my God, that's such oppression. They literally framed as oppression. So no matter what we do, we're going to be framed as oppressors. My point is, when there's a tactical benefit in doing something, do it. Don't care about Western media. That's my point. That's what I meant. When I said hard power, I meant you have to take strong decisions, not worrying about Western media, because harmony only gets you that much. Because the other community doesn't care about harmony. I'm telling you this. Neither Christians nor Muslims care about harmony. They care about how fast they can get their fingers into as many people as possible. I'm telling you, when the situation in a place doesn't benefit them with harmony, they will go the other direction. They literally will. And this is true even for Christians. A lot of Western Christians will say, "Oh, we are so peaceful. We don't hurt people." Yes, because you're culturally moved beyond that, right? But the so-called third world Christians are not like that. They're still in the barbaric phase. Which when initially the Christians went to North America, they were behaving like that. They did not care about they go and destroyed the Native American shrines. And they say, oh, you're pagan, you're devil worshipper, you're evil, you're coming to destroy the society, you're destroying the environment, everything. They build narratives about them as well. Right? Same thing they're doing here as well. Same thing they do in Korea. Why is Christianity spreading so fast in Korea? Because they literally found the one thing that the world is addicted to, which is entertainment. And they went into K-pop. So all of K-pop, all of K-drama is full of Christian symbolism. Yes, it's the Christian symbolism. Why? You just think about it, okay? Almost every Western movie will have something Christian in it, like guaranteed. There'll be some padre, some religious statement, something will be there, okay? And they will still say they're a secular state. But in India, the minute one person says something vaguely Hindu in the movie, all the people lose their shit collectively. Right? Oh my God, what is this? Secularism is gone. Why is that double standard? The same people who enjoy the Western movie and who watch the Indian movie. So you have to be clear. That's my problem with the Bajrang Dal is not that their intent, they want to help people. The problem is that they have not understood the narrative war. They just go blunder into the problem, and then the clips of theirs taken and then sent abroad. Like they literally they clip it and then send it, and you could frame it however they want there, right? So that is what we need to learn. We need to learn how to play the narrative war with them, which we are not doing. I find a lot of Hindu groups don't have the idea of how to play the narrative war. They blunder into the problem. I mean, intent is great, but
I just want to say I just want to make this last point because I think it's getting too late for Bhupen Dada as well. We should let him get some sleep. But I think what
I have to work tomorrow morning. I also want to sleep. Okay.
Even Anand.
Just care about my sleep.
Sorry. I should care about you as well. I'll start caring about you. But I do want to state one thing is that what Anand is saying is right, but it's also a very Indian perspective, right? Now, if you ask a Caribbean Hindu, he'll probably say like the narrative has not changed at all. What narrative used to exist 200-300 years ago is still the narrative today. Right, so it's wrong to say that. I mean, in that sense, it's wrong to state that we lost the narrative war. We never were even part of it, right? So, and we're being too harsh on the Bajrang Dal by saying that you guys are not paying attention to the narrative. That's not the Bajrang Dal's job.
No, I get it. I understand.
Like,
I'm not being harsh on them I'm not being harsh on them. But like I said, no, I care about I do see that their intent is great. They really care about the community. They work their ass off. But my point is,
but the thing is, like, I think this is the narratives. Is not a responsibility of people who are committing the action.
No, but but you have to understand.
Just let me finish, right? So, it's a responsibility of everyone else, right? Now, let me get back to that Babri Masjid or Ram Mandir example, right? Indian journalists would basically say, oh, there was a mosque and it was demolished. It was a diaspora person who basically recontextualized it and reminded people that, oh, we did fight for this for 400 years. We fought for it legally, politically, culturally, right? And through non-violent means. We could have subjugated it if we wanted it. But what happened in 1991 was we completely lost patience. We lost patience with everybody, right? Because everybody failed us. So, again, would you go up to the car sevak and say, "Tum log ne ye sab nahi socha"? I mean, that's very unfair to.
No, you're not understanding what I'm saying. I'm sorry. I think again you're not understanding what I'm saying. Like when the missionary comes, to me, when the missionary comes to India and he's planning his moves, he's always aware of how he can frame it the way he needs to for political benefit.
That's fine. No, I mean that'll always happen, right? No, that'll always happen. But where are our folks with the counter narratives, right? Where's government of India saying that this is our domestic problem? No, shove your opinion up your ass, and this is our domestic problem. You don't have any right to interfere. Sorry, I don't mean to say Anand should shove his opinion up his ass, but
I get.
Sorry.
I get. No, but you're not understanding. Once even a clip, the point is with the government is a slow lumbering machine. Okay, it'll take time to catch up to the situation. My point is when you need to be on it before they can even think about framing it incorrectly. I'm sorry
I think
no, wait, let me finish.
Yeah.
You're seeing it in the framework of do an action and then later the people on the messaging side will manage the narrative. No, when you make the action must be part of the narrative itself. So for example, when you go to a illegal conversion area, like maybe there's a church illegally converting people and you're already planning to go and take action against them, right? Because they're doing bad things. Start already before you even arrive there. You should already be ready that, okay, this is how we're going to frame it. This is how we're going to videotape it. And this way we're going to find the person and make them admit it. Clearly, in very calm manner, we're going to make them admit it. And then take action. So what you do is you covered your bases basically like, if someone tries to use that clip incorrectly, you already are ready. You will be basically the government can't come after, the state can't come after you. Like imagine you're in a Congress state, the state can't come after you, and you also achieved your action. So all three are covered. And if someone tries to reframe it, then the government comes and say you're giving wrong information. This is what the situation was. That's my point.
Institutional support or
but
ground level support from.
I know, I understand.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to say is that you're looking at it from an insider's perspective, right? Like what I see here is not necessarily they don't use excuses to basically attack us. Either way, they just do it for whatever reason they want, right? So like that boy in the Northeast saying Jai Shri Ram, it did not make any noise over here in anywhere in the West, that as far as I can tell. But you would have probably noticed it on Twitter and some wingnans
Yeah.
basically
My
retweeting
God.
it, right? But it had no on the ground impact. There are other reasons why it happens, right? And that can be independent of what happens in India. So that distinction needs to be understood really well.
No,
But
but they will share it among their church groups, for example. They will not show it to you.
that's fine. I mean, वो तो हम भी करते हैं, right? There's no difference between them and us when it comes to these things.
No, but my point is we don't frame it as get out of our country Christians. We like get out of our country Hindus. That's the reality is happening right now. What's happening right now?
That's
They're throwing
fine.
eggs on, they're throwing eggs on a Rath Yatra in California. Like that is literally happening. Are we going around like throw eggs on
मैं
a
वही
peaceful Christian? नहीं
मैं
करते ना?
वही रथ यात्रा में था. That's the thing, right? Like I was in that रथ यात्रा when that happened.
Oh my
So-
God.
So I know what the situation is like, but it wasn't because of that random thing or random church thing. But this is where I feel like the broader community and the Indian state should basically start being more public, right? Like it needs to. Now you have to look at this in various layers, right? So the broader Indian community raises this issue. The diaspora here sees that as a sense of support. They start pressuring local politicians. That's pressure from the ground up. Then the Indian state raises these issues, and then there's pressure from the ground, from top, right? So unless these two things happen, you will always be in a situation where the diaspora feels like completely disconnected, spiritually connected, but completely disconnected from India and Indian issues politically, right? And that's going to be the unfortunate state of affairs.
Okay,
Uh,
so I think we are out of time, but I think we need to continue this discussion maybe on Wednesday. Okay, so Shastri and others, be ready on Wednesday. We're going to have one more part 2 of this because we need to talk about China and few other things which are there. And please, all of you, share this to Sean Binda. We want him to discuss this with us.
Sean who?
Sean Binda. Sean Binda. Okay.
Sean
Oh, the one in the
Binda,
book.
no, Sean Binda is
Oh, okay, I know. The guy from South America, right?
he's
Yeah,
a
from Caribbean. No, he's from Caribbean, but he's in. I think he's lives in now Canada. If I am not wrong.
he's a Canadian Caribbean Hindu YouTuber.
Yeah. And I know Sean. I like his stuff. That's what good messaging is about. He's very good at messaging. Like that's the frame. That's the way we need to frame every one of our arguments. Very similar to that. I think we have one more good one. Like I think Love Patel. He's in the UK. I think.
I
He's
think
also doing a good
emissary.
job.
I think we also have the emissary channel also does quite good job.
Savi the monk
I
is
am not
another
a.
one.
I'm not. I don't approve of the Aryan invasion guys. Pro Aryan.
No, at least he has done some good work. So
Right.
anyway, so all of you just share, tweet him this podcast today, so that we can get his perspective because it's important. I think there is a black hole in terms of the at least the indentured laborer community. It's not indentured anyway, but still is said, and their voice is not being heard, and not people not know in India. So let's bring him in to discuss a bit of more of this. Maybe we'll have it on Wednesday. Wednesday I will be in some other city. We will discuss. Okay. Thank you everybody. Thank you Shastri. Thank you Anand. Thank you Slevin. Okay.
And
Yeah.
namaste.
Good night.
Thank
See
you.
you.
Good night, everyone.
See you on midnight on Wednesday.
Good morning, Shastri, by the way. Since now they know that you're where you are. Good morning. Good morning.
All right.
Good morning. Jai Shri Ram. Vande Mataram.
Vande Mataram.
Well, trivial.